Welcome to today's deep dive. I want you to picture a really universal feeling for a second.
Oh, I think I know where this is going.
Yeah, you're sitting at a desk, right? The room is completely silent except for, like, the incredibly loud ticking of a clock somewhere on the wall.
Yeah, the classic nightmare.
And staring back at you is this piece of paper that is supposed to determine exactly how much you know. A test. I mean, we all grew up with the red pen, the report cards, those rigid numbers that supposedly told us where we stood in the intellectual hierarchy.
Right, and the entire architecture of how we measure human intelligence, or even just basic capability, is built around that specific flavor of anxiety.
Yeah, it really is.
We are deeply conditioned, like culturally, to accept that grading system as the definitive metric of learning. It presents learning as this entirely binary state. I mean, you either got the A or you failed. There's no in between.
And when you step outside of that traditional classroom setting, whether you're a parent trying to guide a child's learning at home or, maybe you're a professional trying to learn a complex new software system for your job,
Right.
that entire rigid structure completely vanishes. Suddenly, there are no report cards. There are no standardized end-of-year tests to tell you you're on track.
Which is terrifying for a lot of people.
Exactly. That absence triggers a very specific, very deep anxiety for anyone who is guiding a learner or even just attempting to learn something themselves. Because the question becomes, how do you actually know if learning is happening without relying on those stressful, standardized benchmarks?
Well, it forces this profound reevaluation of what we even consider proof of knowledge.
Right.
Because once you remove the artificial structure of like the pop quiz and the grade book, you're left staring at the learner, just wondering if any of the information actually penetrated the surface. You start second-guessing the entire educational process.
Which brings us to the mission of today's deep dive. We are looking at this fascinating piece of instructional material from an organization called Empowered Homefront.
Yeah, this is a great document.
It is. Specifically, it's a lesson script from an instructor named Lori, and it's titled Beyond the Grade, Assessing Homeschool Learning Without Testing. And our goal today is to unpack a system that ditches traditional grading entirely, replacing it with methods that measure true understanding. So, okay, let's unpack this.
But really quickly, before we get into the exact mechanics of this framework, we need to emphasize why this source material matters so much for you, the listener.
Definitely. It's not just for homeschoolers.
Exactly. Even though this specific document is aimed at homeschool parents trying to navigate their child's daily education, the core problem it tackles is entirely universal. Measuring actual comprehension versus short-term memorization is a challenge in, well, every facet of life.
Like at work or with hobbies.
Right. That applies if you're training a brand new hire at your company, if you're attempting to master a new language before a trip, or if you just want to know if you actually absorbed the core arguments of that dense nonfiction book you just finished reading.
Yeah.
The mechanics of human learning and how we assess it, they remain the same regardless of the venue.
So before we can implement the solutions outlined in this document, we kind of have to look at why our default methods fail so spectacularly.
No, they really do.
According to the source, when a parent or a mentor suddenly realizes they need to check if learning is actually happening, they usually fall into one of three distinct traps. It's like the status quo of panicked assessment.
And those traps are incredibly predictable because they're simply reflexive reactions, based on what we survived in our own institutional schooling.
Right. We default to what we know.
Even if what we know was deeply flawed,
Right.
we just recreate the trauma, basically.
Yeah. So trap number one, they go out, they buy a literal grade book, and they start grading everyday assignments. Like they slap a letter grade on every single worksheet.
Which is exhausting.
Totally. Then, trap number two, they start giving formal pop quizzes at the kitchen table. And trap number three, which honestly might be the most common of all.
Just ignoring it.
Exactly. They just hope it's working and intentionally avoid checking at all.
Right. And if we synthesize what instructor Lori is pointing out here, the first two options, the physical grade book and the kitchen table pop quiz, they simply recreate the exact anxiety, pressure, and tears of a traditional classroom.
Yeah, you're bringing the worst part of school into your house.
Exactly. You end up destroying the very environment of organic, curiosity-driven learning you're trying to build. You're importing the most stressful elements of the institution into your home or your workplace.
And what about that third option?
Well, just hoping it works through sheer optimism. That isn't an educational strategy. That is pure psychological avoidance. I mean, if you wait 6 months to find out if a foundational concept actually stuck and it turns out it didn't.
You've built half a year of education on sand.
Exactly. You have to start all over.
And the document points out that all three of these traps stem from one massive fundamental false belief. It's this ingrained assumption that assessment means testing.
And that false equivalency is the main target of this entire framework.
Hmm.
The document argues that assessment and testing are not synonyms. Not at all.
Right.
Assessment simply requires answering one single question. Can the learner use what they learned?
I really want to linger on that word, the UCC, because it makes me think of like the process of learning to drive a car.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Yeah, because trying to assess learning with a written test is like trying to figure out if someone knows how to drive by making them fill in bubbles on a multiple choice exam at the kitchen table.
Right. They might score 100%.
Exactly. They might be able to write down the exact dictionary definition of a parallel park or, the optimal hand placement on a steering wheel. But none of that means they can safely merge onto a busy highway during rush hour.
No, not at all.
The only way to assess if they can actually drive is to hand them the keys, sit in the passenger seat and say, drive us to the grocery store.
Because the written test only measures the recall of isolated facts in a vacuum. Driving to the store measures application in a dynamic environment.
Right.
And that shift from recall to application, exactly what Empowered Homefront is advocating for. You have to evaluate the performance of the knowledge, not just the possession of it.
I mean, I hear the theory, but practically speaking, how does this not devolve into total chaos?
How do you mean?
Well, if we strip away the quizzes and we literally throw the gradebook in the trash, how do we systematically measure that ability to use the knowledge? You can't just hand a kid the keys to algebraic equations and tell them to drive.
Right.
There has to be some kind of structured evaluation, otherwise we're back to trap number 3, just hoping it works.
Well, you're pointing out the exact gap that the document's framework is designed to fill. It replaces the chaos of guesswork with 3 specific, structured methods to assess learning.
Okay.
3 highly calibrated methods that use 0 formal tests and 0 letter grades. And the framework starts by establishing immediate comprehension.
Okay, so they call this first step the teach-back method. And to really grasp it, we have to look at the old way versus the new way.
Right.
What most parents and mentors do is rely on quizzing. You write down some questions, multiple choice, fill in the blank, true or false. You interrogate the learner.
Which just brings the adversarial anxiety of the classroom directly to the kitchen table or, the office cubicle.
Exactly. But the teach-back method flips that dynamic entirely. Instead of forcing them to answer your predetermined questions, you ask the learner to teach the concept back to you entirely in their own words.
And the source actually provides the exact script you're supposed to use.
Yes, the script is so good, you look at the learner and say, can you teach me what you learned today? Pretend I don't know anything about it.
What's fascinating here is the heavy cognitive science operating beneath the surface of that incredibly simple, casual request.
Yeah, they actually cite some studies, right?
They do. The source explicitly references applied retrieval practice, pointing specifically to foundational research by Roediger and Karpike from 2006.
Okay, break that down for us.
So when you ask a learner to explain something using their own vocabulary, you're forcing the brain to engage in what is called generative learning.
Okay, so they aren't just recognizing information, they're actually constructing it from scratch.
Exactly.
It's like the difference between recognizing a song when it comes on the radio and being able to sing it entirely a cappella from memory.
Oh, that is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. Recognizing the song on the radio is multiple choice testing. Singing it a cappella is generative learning.
Makes sense.
In the Empowered Homefront curriculum, they refer to this as Level 4 comprehension. It's the absolute highest tier. If a learner can explain a complex concept back to you, translating it into their own words and connecting the dots themselves, they aren't just remembering facts.
They're actually understanding.
Right. They are actively demonstrating deep structural understanding. No standardized test can measure true comprehension better than the active explanation.
I have to admit, though, I'm skeptical about how stress-free this actually is.
Really? Why?
Well, if I'm sitting across from my kid or a trainee at work and I demand they look me in the eye and explain the mechanics of photosynthesis, isn't that just a verbal pop quiz in a slightly different outfit?
Ah, I see what you mean.
It feels like it would cause the exact same performance anxiety as handing them a blank worksheet.
The anxiety factor is entirely mitigated by the framing of the interaction. You have to look closely at the exact script the document provided. Pretend I don't know anything about it. By using that specific neutralizing phrasing, You are fundamentally shifting the power dynamic in the room.
It's almost like a psychological trick. You're stripping away their defensive posture because they literally think they are doing you a favor by catching you up to speed.
Precisely. When you administer a traditional quiz, you are operating as the authority figure interrogating a subordinate. You hold all the answers, and they have to perform for your approval.
Yeah, which is terrifying.
But when you ask them to teach you, and you deliberately position yourself as the blank slate, the learner becomes the expert. They are the authority figure imparting valuable knowledge to the adult. It completely removes the adversarial nature of traditional testing.
They aren't defending themselves against your tricky questions.
Right. They are generously helping you understand a topic.
That subtle shift in authority changes everything about how a person approaches a conversation. But of course, teaching it back 10 minutes after reading about it is only step one. Because human brains are incredibly leaky vessels. Comprehension today does not guarantee that the knowledge is going to stick around for tomorrow.
Well, yeah. The teach-back method is strictly designed for the same day or the next day. It's a diagnostic tool for immediate grasp. To measure if actual learning has occurred, we have to look at long-term retention.
Which means we need another method.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because if immediate comprehension is just the first step, the real test is what happens when that knowledge naturally starts to fade.
And that requires method 2, the week later check. The source breaks down the traditional trap here too, like what do most educational systems do?
Friday quizzes.
Yes, they administer a massive end-of-the-week test, a formal, high-stress, sit-down event on Friday afternoon covering everything from Monday morning onward. But the document points out this really only measures short-term cramming.
Because the information is just sitting in a shallow, temporary holding pen in the brain, right? Waiting to be frantically dumped onto the test paper before it evaporates completely.
So, Empowered Homefront suggests replacing that Friday anxiety fest with one single, incredibly casual question delivered 3 to 7 days after the initial lesson.
No dramatic setup.
No warning at all. The exact script they give is, hey, random question, what was that topic about?
And here we are getting into the mechanical application of spaced retrieval.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Well, when you let a few days pass, the neural pathway connected to that information naturally starts to degrade. The brain begins to prune it away.
Right, use it or lose it.
Exactly. So hitting the learner with a casual question days later forces their brain to retrieve that information cold. It's exactly like taking a muscle to failure at the gym.
Oh, I like that.
Forcing the brain to recall degrading information causes micro tears in the memory pathway, prompting the brain to rebuild it thicker and much stronger for the next time.
So if you test them on Friday while the information is still fresh?
The mental muscle hasn't degraded yet, so you aren't building any permanent strength.
But here's the thing we always seem to forget as adults guiding learners. Forgetting is just biology.
Yep.
So what happens when you ask them on Saturday morning and they just stare at you? Like they completely blank.
Oh, the dreaded blank stare.
My instinct would be to view that as a massive failure, a sign that the whole week of study was a complete waste of time.
The source addresses this specific fear head-on. Because it is so common, it is explicitly not a failure. Pulling directly from instructor Laurie's lesson. If they cannot answer the casual question, it simply means the material needs one more pass.
One more pass.
That is it. It completely removes the moral weight from forgetting. When a learner blanks on a Saturday morning, it's not an indictment of their intelligence or their work ethic.
Right.
It's just a diagnostic check engine light on the dashboard telling you that specific neural pathway needs one more repetition before it becomes permanent.
It's just data. We have to stop taking a blank stare as a personal insult to our teaching abilities. So they remember the facts a week later, but remembering a fact and actually knowing what to do with it out in the wild are two entirely different things.
Right. Application.
How do we test if they can actually use the information without handing them yet another worksheet?
We have to move out of the theoretical and into the practical, which is exactly what Method 3 is designed to do.
Method 3 is the new situation test, and this is about establishing absolute mastery. The old trap here is handing the learner the exact same style of worksheet with the exact same format sitting at the exact same desk.
Which allows a clever learner to succeed through mere pattern recognition.
Yeah, exactly.
They aren't actually metabolizing the knowledge, they are just mashing shapes and formats based on what worked yesterday.
But the new way, the new situation test, asks them to apply the knowledge to a completely different real-life context 1 to 2 weeks later.
And what's the script for that?
The script here is, we learned about X. How does that connect to this completely different real-world thing over here?
Let's ground this.
Okay, so if a learner just spent a week studying fractions, a new situation test isn't giving them a harder fraction worksheet. It's bringing them into the kitchen, handing them a recipe that serves 4 people, and saying, we have 8 people coming over for dinner. I need you to adjust all these measurements so we have enough food.
That is a phenomenal example. You have removed the numbers from the sterile environment of the textbook and forced the learner to grapple with them in a messy, unpredictable reality.
And it matters to them now because it's dinner.
Right. And the source notes that this is the absolute highest echelon of learning. We are back to level 4, but without the safety net of the classroom context.
Yeah.
When a learner can take a mathematical concept, detach it entirely from the book where they first saw it, and spontaneously use it to double a recipe they have never seen before.
That's mastery.
As Lori says, when they can do that, they own the material. It's permanently integrated into their worldview.
Okay, so we have the teach back for immediate comprehension. We have the week later casual question for long-term retention. And we have the new situation test, like our kitchen recipe, for ultimate mastery. It sounds foolproof.
It does sound foolproof.
But here's where it gets really interesting.
Because there is a behavioral catch.
Yep.
And it usually trips up the mentor, not the learner.
The source includes a very specific warning about this. Having these 3 brilliant zero-test methods is completely useless if the environment you execute them in is quietly toxic.
Right.
All 3 of these methods will instantly fall apart if you, the mentor, fail to control one very specific, very natural adult urge. The document calls it maintaining the judgment-free zone.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture of human psychology, this might be the most difficult part of the entire framework to successfully execute.
Because it deals with what the document calls the correcting instinct.
The urge to fix it.
Exactly. I want you to picture the scenario. You're using the teach back method. Your learner is confidently explaining a new concept to you in their own words. And right in the middle of their explanation, they state a crucial detail that is completely, undeniably wrong.
Oh, I know that feeling.
I have to admit, if my kid or my trainee does this, it is physically painful for me not to jump in. Every instinct screams to offer a quick, polite correction. Why is it so incredibly damaging if I just say, actually, it works like this?
Because the moment you interrupt a teachback to correct a mistake, the illusion of the power dynamic shatters.
Oh, wow.
The learner instantly realizes they've been tricked.
Yeah.
They realize this isn't a collaborative conversation where they are the respected expert. They realize it is, in fact, an interrogation. You are checking up on them.
And the psychological damage of that realization is immediate.
Severe.
They realize you were holding the red pen the entire time. It was just invisible.
Exactly. And once they feel the sting of that invisible red pen, their behavior changes entirely. They stop being honest about what they actually know and what they are genuinely confused about.
They're scared.
Right. Instead of searching their own brain for the truth of the concept, they start searching your facial expressions for clues. They start timidly guessing what they think you want to hear, just to avoid the embarrassment of those constant micro-corrections.
It totally reminds me of being a trainee at a new job. Imagine you're trying to learn a complicated new software system, and your manager is standing right over your shoulder.
That's the worst.
Every single time you move your mouse toward the wrong drop-down menu, your manager grabs your hand and says, "No, not that one, click over here."
Yep.
If they keep grabbing the mouse every time you hesitate, you never actually learn how to navigate the software. You just learn to hover your hand over the keyboard and wait for them to do it for you. You are actively teaching them helplessness.
That's a great way to put it. When you constantly correct a learner during a teach-back, you're grabbing the mental mouse.
Wow.
You're preventing them from navigating those difficult mental pathways themselves, which is the only way those pathways get stronger.
So how do we fix it? How do we suppress that overwhelming urge to grab the mouse?
Well, the document provides what they call, say, this, not that, alternative scripts. And they are incredibly revealing about how language shapes confidence.
They are subtle, but they completely change the trajectory of the conversation.
Let's hear them.
Okay, so instead of saying the classic, "No, that's not right," the document says you should calmly reply with, "Okay, tell me more about that part."
Notice how entirely neutral that response is. It doesn't confirm or deny the accuracy of the statement.
Right.
It simply prompts a deeper, independent exploration of the thought process.
And instead of saying close, but actually, which is like the polite correction we all default to.
Oh, I say that all the time.
Me too. But the script says to respond with, interesting, what made you think that?
And that specific phrase is powerful because it forces the learner to reverse engineer their own logic.
Because they have to explain their steps.
Exactly. Often when asked, what made you think that? The learner will start talking through their steps out loud, suddenly realize the glaring flaw in their own reasoning, and self-correct without you ever having to point it out.
That's amazing. Finally, instead of saying you forgot the most important part of the chapter, you just ask, what else do you remember?
These scripts form the core rule of the judgment-free zone. The source breaks the mentor's responsibility down into 3 silent steps. Listen, note, ask.
Listen, note, ask.
You listen to their explanation without interrupting. You mentally note exactly what they get right and what they're missing, and you ask neutral follow-up questions. But you absolutely do not offer a correction until they are completely finished with their thought process.
Because, as the document states over and over, the mistakes are not failures.
No.
The mistakes are pure, unfiltered data. They tell you exactly what concept needs one more pass tomorrow. But you only get access to that pure data if the learner feels safe enough to be intellectually honest about what is actually in their head.
But this raises an important question about our own comfort levels as guides and mentors.
How so?
Well, the document readily admits that biting your tongue requires a real, uncomfortable sacrifice. Embracing the judgment-free zone means you have to endure the profound discomfort of watching someone you care about struggle and stumble.
Which is so hard to do.
It is. You wait. You ask neutral questions. You let them work through the friction. But the payoff facilitating real structural understanding instead of just shallow pattern matching is immense.
So, what does this all mean? If we synthesize everything we've unpacked today from the Empowered Homefront framework, the core message is incredibly liberating. You don't need standardized tests. You don't need arbitrary letter grades.
Right.
You can completely abandon the anxiety-inducing tools of the traditional classroom that we all grew up dreading.
This is such a relief.
By utilizing the teach-back for immediate comprehension, the week-later check for spaced retrieval, and the new situation check for true mastery, you have a complete zero-anxiety assessment system at your fingertips.
Provided, of course, that you possess the discipline to bite your tongue and maintain that absolute judgment-free zone.
The hardest part.
The methods are the vehicle, but the psychological safety of the learner is the engine that makes the whole thing run.
I want to make sure we connect this directly back to you, the listener, because the applications of this framework extend so far beyond the realm of homeschooling.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about the next time you're trying to pick up a complex new hobby, or, you're tasked with training a colleague on a completely new workflow at the office. Don't build them a multiple choice quiz. Don't give them a written evaluation.
Ask them to teach it back.
Ask them to teach the workflow back to you as if you've never seen it. Wait a week and ask a casual, out-of-the-blue question about it while you're getting coffee. And above all, when they stumble, don't grab the mouse.
Right.
Ask them what made them think that.
That level of psychological safety is what breeds actual resilient competence in the adult world. It completely redefines how we interact with information, and more importantly, how we interact with each other during the learning process.
It really does. But I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, something that builds on everything we've just discussed but turns the lens inward.
Okay.
At the very end of the source document, the instructor, Lori, briefly teases the topic of their next upcoming lesson, and she asks a genuinely haunting question. What if you are explaining things clearly, you are assessing perfectly, and the learner still isn't getting it? What if the problem isn't what you're teaching, but how?
Oof. That is a profound pivot, shifting the responsibility entirely back onto the structure of the delivery itself.
Right. I want to challenge you to apply that question to your own life. Think about that universal feeling we started with, sitting at the desk, listening to the ticking clock, staring in a panic at the test paper. The next time you are struggling to learn something new, maybe you keep failing to remember a crucial sequence of facts for a big presentation, or you just can't get the hang of a new technical skill at work. Ask yourself a hard question.
Are you failing because the material is simply too advanced for you?
Or are you failing because you are constantly giving yourself stressful mental pop quizzes at the kitchen table of your own mind instead of actually trying to teach the concept back to yourself in a completely judgment-free zone?
Are you unconsciously holding the red pen on yourself?
Throw away the red pen. Stop grading your own learning process. Hand yourself the keys and just drive.